So we're done with this card. So now the next thing is to format the bar chart. Okay, so the bars are horizontal, the columns are vertical. So I'm going to come here and go to format your visual. All right, so the y-axis labels, basically what we have on the y-axis, which is the category, the recruitment source. I'm going to expand the y-axis, and then the font size should be 13. Okay, so let's see 15. Okay, so 15 is fair, it's okay. And you notice that there are some text that are not, fully shown or fully visible. They've kind of like gone inside. So I'm going to come here to my y-axis. You can see the maximum width. Okay, so basically the maximum width for the values of my y-axis has been met, or it has stretched, right? Because the maximum width here is 25%. So I'm going to take this to the maximum, which is 50%. So now it now has more space to take longer texts. So we're done with that. I'm going to turn off the y-axis title and also the x-axis title, because I think when the main visual title tells the end user, the viewer of this report, what this visual is all about, then there isn't any need for the y-axis and x-axis labels, because the title itself, which says employees by recruitment source, already does justice to that. From this title, anybody looking at this visual knows that these bars represent the employees, right? And it is comparing the recruitment source by the number of employees. Okay, so I'm going to turn them off. I'll come to my y-axis. I'll go to my title and turn it off. I'll do the same thing for my x-axis, and now this time I'm going to turn off both the values and the title, and here is why. So I'll turn them off first. The reason why I'm turning off both the value and the title for my x-axis is because I want to have data labels. So I'm going to scroll down and then turn on my data labels. I do think when you're creating visuals, you need to try as much as possible to avoid clutter, to avoid having too much elements on one visual. It's going to cause chaos. It might even confuse your reader, your viewer. So the labels are not quite visible. I'm going to expand the data labels section, go to values, and then increase the font size to 15. Another thing that I want to do is to work on the column, on the bars size. So I'm going to expand the bars, right? In your visual, every element in your visual, there is a format feature available for every element. Your y-axis has its own format section, your x-axis has its own format section, your visual title has its format section, even the visual background, including the type of visual, in this case the bars. So I'm going to expand the bars, go to layout, and increase the space between the categories. I just want to create more space between the categories, so let's increase it to 40%. Okay, so you can see how much better this looks. It removes that clutter and gives space. So this is great. I'm also going to work on the visual title, and how to do that is by moving from the visual to general section. So I'll go there and then expand the title, and then I'll increase the font size from 14 to 18. Okay, and also work on the text on the title. So this should be recruitment source. The recruitment and the source should be separated. I'll just add a space there. So this is great. This is already looking cool. Okay, so now I'm going to apply this same edits on this visual down here, which is employees by departments. So I can copy and paste the format applied to my employees by recruitment source. So I can copy the format here and paste it on employees by department. Remember I said that the visuals have to be the same. So I'm going to, and they're kind of like similar visuals, almost the same, just that the alignment is different. One is vertical, the other is horizontal, but they're the same type of visuals basically. So I'm going to come here to my employees by recruitment, so select it and then go to this format painter, click on it, and then come here to employees by department and paste it on the visual. All right, so now there is an issue. For the software engineering, the text is not fully seen. Okay, the only way it can be fully seen now is probably I decrease the size, the font size of the values on my x-axis, or I increase the width of the visual, which I don't want to do because it's going to take up space. So now another approach to this will be changing the visual type to a bar chart instead of a column chart. Okay, so most times the bar chart is even preferable because it can, like, it works best in most cases. So easily change this chart type. While selecting these employees by department, I'm just going to go over to my visualization pane and select the stacked bar chart. Okay, so this is good, this is great. Now let's move on to the table. So first things first, I want to change the column names. Not like change it or just make it better. So we have manager name. I'm just going to double click on that from my data fields here and add a space. So active is okay, terminated is okay, average of employee satisfaction is not, doesn't look good. So let's say this name should be average employee satisfaction. Okay, so average, okay, average M satisfaction. So M is basically employee. And then next thing I'm going to do is to increase the font size of the values in this table. I'll go to the format your visual, go to values and increase the font size to 15. I'll do the same thing for the column headers. So I'll expand the column headers, go to the font size and increase it to 15. Another thing that I want to do is to increase the space between the rows. And for that, I'm going to go to the grid. In the grid, you see options. So I'm going to expand that, and then we have row padding. So row padding is going to like pad up the rows in such a way that it creates space between the rows. So for this row padding, I'm going to increase it to 10. So you can see how this looks now. This looks more better than how it was before. Before it just looked so cluttered, so tiny. You'd have to like strain your eyes to see what is written there. But now it's better. You can easily tell the rows apart. Next thing I want to do is to kind of arrange these columns so everything looks okay. So these are columns, okay, and you can expand the width if you want, you can reduce the width if you want. For the average employee satisfaction, I am going to decrease the width a little. Okay, so that's not how to do that. Okay, so let's bring this back. So I guess to decrease it is going to be from the back. Okay, so I'm going to come to average employee satisfaction and go to the column border, the border line or the border here from the back, and just bring it. I'm going to expand the active column, okay, and also expand the manager name. Now what I want to do next is to align the columns that have numerals. I want to align the values to the middle. So you're going to see the reason why I'm doing all of this very soon. So now how do I do this? I'm going to come down to specific column. So this is when you want to apply some formats to some specific columns, okay? So I'm going to come here to series and select active. And then I'll come down. You can see that we have alignment. I'm going to select center, okay? And then I'm going to select apply to header. So basically whatever is being applied to the value should also be applied to the header. So I'll turn this on. I'll do the same thing for terminated. So let me just turn on the apply to header and then select the center alignment. I will also do the same thing for average employee satisfaction. So I'll come here to series and select average employee satisfaction, turn on the apply to header, and then select center alignment. Okay, so another thing that I want to do for this particular visual is to turn off the total at the bottom. It's not needed because we already have that information on our cards at the top left here. So I'm going to move up. Okay, so yeah, so I found it. Remember I told you that every element in your visual, there is a format section available, so it will help you to format that particular element. So I'm going to expand the totals section and turn it off, and you can see what we have now. The total is gone, so we just have the main informations that we need basically. Now the next thing that I want to do is to apply the colors to my visual on my dashboard. Okay, before that I need to work on my title for my map visual. So right now the text are too small, so I'm going to select this visual and go to the general section in my format to a visual section, go to title, and then change the font size or increase the font size to 18. And then I'm going to reduce this table height a little to create space for my title, starts by manager. Okay, so now I'm going to be turning off the background of some of my visuals. So I'll start with the card visual here, and then I'll come here to my format your visual, go to general, go to effect, and then turn off the background. I'll do the same thing for employees by recruitment. In fact, I'm going to select both visuals, okay, so that I can apply both formats. So now this one in particular only works when the visuals are the same, not similar but exactly the same. So I will select the employees by recruitment source, hold down my control key and select employees by department, and now I can go to effects and then turn off the background. So from here I can change the color of the title, okay, because right now I can't see anything. Change the color of the title, the chart title, and also the y-axis, and I think my data labels. So I'm going to go to the title while both visuals are selected. I'll go to the title in the general section and then come to text color and select this white 10% darker. I'm going to go to the visual section, go to the y-axis where the categories are for the recruitment source and department, and then go to the color and also white 10% darker. I just noticed that the chart title should have been Sego UI. So I'm going to go back to general, go to the title and change the font style from Dean to Sego UI. I should do the same for others, so I'll do that later. Now the next thing I'll do is go back to the visual section, go to the data labels, expand the values and also change the color to white 10% darker. Now the next thing that I want to do is to change the bars color. I need to go to the bars, right? So for each element, just locate the element that you want to format and apply your formatting. So I'm going to expand the bars, go to colors. So I already have the color for the yellow. I'll just select copy the hex code. So I'll come back here to the color and go to more colors and just paste in the hex code. So now this is already given, it's already looking great. Another thing that I need to do is to format this table. So I'm going to select this, go to format your visual. You can see that we have this blue line below the column headers. I don't want this blue line because we're sticking with yellow and black. So I'm going to go to the grid, go to border and change the color from blue to this yellow because that's our main color. And then I'm going to go to values. So now this is where I want to change the background color. Okay, so first of all, the text color should be white 10% darker. So that's the main text color. And then we also have the alternate text color. So the alternate text color is for the banded rows. Okay, so I'm going to go to the alternate text color and change it to white 10% darker. Then I'm going to go to the main background color and change it to the black color we used earlier. Then for the alternate background color, I'm going to give it the placeholder color. Okay, so Ctrl C I'll come back to the alternates, go to more colors and paste what I have here. I think I need to do it like a flip. So the main background color should be the placeholder color, okay? And then the alternate background color should be the darker shade. All right, so now I need to also format the column headers background and the font color also. So I'm going to go to the column headers, go to the text color and change it to white 10% darker, go to the background color and change it to the placeholder color. So this is good. Now the next thing that I need to do is to turn off the background color, the main background color. And for this, I'll go to the general and go to effect and turn off the background. Okay, so now let's move on to the map visual. So for the map visual, I'm going to go to general, go to effect and turn off the background color. So now I can no more see my title. I'll go to title, change the text color to white 10% darker and also change the font style to Sego UI. Now that is done, I'm going to head back to the visual section. And now let's work on the fill colors, okay? Because we're sticking with yellow and black. All right, so I'm going to expand the fill colors. I'm going to turn on the middle color. So basically adding like a middle color. So the minimum should have this light shade. So basically the states with lower employees should have this color, okay? So the maximum should have our main yellow, okay? Then the center should have, so I'm just going to go to more colors and so let's go with this. So we stick to the plot. And then for the minimum, I want this to be a little bit lighter. So I'll select the minimum and then go to more colors and choose a lighter color. I can see that the minimum, of course, is 1. We have some that, the employees in that state were 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then the highest here is 276. So the center should not be this value. So the center should be from 2. So now we're done setting the colors. From here, we can easily spot the state with the highest because it has that sharp yellow, which is our main yellow. Okay, so I'm going to collapse this. And then for the blank areas, which are basically these areas that are gray in color, we're going to make the blank areas have a darker shade. Okay, so I'm going to expand that and use our placeholder color. And then the border line, which I'm going to make use of our main yellow color. So it just gives life to the map visual. And then we can either increase the size of the border or reduce it. It just depends. So I think I'm going to increase it. So let's say 2 is fine. So now that we're done with this, it's time to now focus on the card visual. So I think I'm not done with the table visual yet. So let's see what we have in our reference dashboard. Okay, so my table visual has borders. So I'm going to create that. I'll select my table visual and then I am going to go to the general section, go to the effects and then turn on the visual border. I'll expand it to change the color. So I'll select yellow. Okay, so now let's focus on the cards. So first of all, this card up here, I'm going to select it. So I've already gone ahead to turn off the main background color. So now the card visual itself also has like a background color or the color for each card or the cards. And to turn off the background, I am going to go to, so when you want to turn off the main background, you go to the general section, right? So for the card visual here, when you want to turn off the background for the cards, you're going to go to the multi-card layout. And then when you scroll down, you're going to see background. So I'm going to turn this off. And then we are left with some borders, which shouldn't be here. So for this, I am going to go to cards, And in the cards, you see the border. I'll turn it off. Okay. Now the next thing is to set the color. So basically, the values are colored yellow while the labels are colored white 10% darker. So I'm going to go to the callouts value. I'll expand that, change the color to yellow, and also increase the font size. Okay, so let's say 30, and then we have the label. So the label color, the font color should be white 10% darker. Then I am going to reduce this a little. So I'm going to apply the same format here, but this time I'm not going to copy and paste. Okay, because both cards are different when it comes to the orientation. So I'll come here to the employee information card visual and then go to callouts, expand the values, change the color to yellow. So I'll go to the multi-card layout and turn off the background. So I think for this, the main background isn't turned off. So I'll go to the general, go to effects and turn off the background. And then I'm going to go back to the visual section, go to the cards. So for the cards, I'm not going to turn off the background, but I'm going to turn off the border. I'll expand the background and then change the fill color from white to the background color. Okay, so I'll go to more colors and paste. So very soon you're going to see why I did this, because I'm going to have a placeholder behind this. Okay, so now that we're done with this, the next thing is to change the font color of the labels. And for that, I'm going to go to callouts and expand my labels and change the font color to white 10% darker. So now it's time to put in the placeholders. And to bring in the shape, I'll go to insert and go to my shape section. So where you have the square circles, and then I'm going to select a rectangle. So by default, it's going to give you the blue color, but it can always be changed. So I'm just going to reduce the height a little for this card and then go to style, change the color to the background, sorry, the placeholder color, which is this. So I'll come here, go to more colors and paste, and then I'm going to turn off the border. I'll go to shape and set the rounded corners because I want the edges or the corners to have a little roundness. So I'll set this to 15px. So let's see how that looks like. So I'll copy this and paste. So Ctrl C, Ctrl V to copy and paste, and then I'll just place it on the other visuals. Also make sure that they are a little bit bigger than the visuals. Okay, so right now it looks like they're covering the visuals, but we're going to have that corrected very soon. So I'll copy this placeholder again, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Just going to increase this a little. All right, so I'll copy and paste again. So let's have this here. Okay, so let me just adjust this employee information a little bit. Okay, and now adjust my card. Okay, so I'll copy this, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Okay, and just adjust. Now the last one. Okay, so now I'm going to select all the placeholders. I'll select this top one first, then hold down my control key and select others. And then I am going to go to style and turn on the shadow. Okay, so I'll go to shadow. So let's see the position. So this is bottom right. You can change it to whatever position you want it. Could be center or whatever. So let's leave it as center. And then I'm going to send these placeholders to the back of the visuals. So I'll click on format, and then you'll see send backward, bring forward. So I'm going to go to send backward. I'll click on this drop down and send to back. And this is how it looks like. Okay, so I'm just going to arrange my visuals a little bit. Okay, just arranging my visuals a little bit. we're actually going to make or do further formatting, the formatting of some of the visuals, especially the table and this card. I feel like the colors, the main background color, the placeholder color, and some things are just a little bit out of place. All right, so what I'm going to do is I really want to reduce the darkness of the main background, so or reduce the blackness of the main background. So I'm just going to go to the format your report, go to canvas background and set the transparency to 5%. So I'm going to apply the same principle in the card visual here. I'll go to the cards, go to background and set the transparency to, so let's do 80% for the cards. All right, so this is much better. So unlike the reference dashboard, I don't want to have these lines on the card visual here. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to turn on the borders of the card. So right here in my format your visual section, I'm going to go to the card section and then I'm going to come down to where I see border and turn it on. So by default, this is the color, black by default. And I just like the way this feels. So we're not done. Another thing that I want to do is to work on the table. Now the table, the colors in the table, I know I selected these colors initially, but right now I think these colors don't do justice. Okay, so I'm going to select this table. And the first thing I want to work on is the column headers. So I'll go to the format your visual section, go to the column headers, and for the background color, I am going to be using the placeholder color basically. So for the background, I'll just select the color, go to more colors and paste the placeholder color. So I think I need to work on the values first of all. All right, so I'm going to expand the values. And then for the main background color, I'll change it. So come here to more colors and paste, which is what we have here. And then the alternate background color, I want it to be the same with the main background color, which is this color that we recently just used. So I'll select that. I also want the same thing for the header. All right, so now I can go to the column header and select the color that I want. Okay, so this is good. Another thing that I want to do is to change the color of the grid lines, the horizontal grid lines, to be yellow. So for this, I'm going to go to the grid. Remember, every element in your visual, there is a format for it, or you can edit it. You can format every element on your visual. So I'll come here to grid, and for the horizontal grid lines, I am going to come to color and just select yellow. I am also going to turn on the vertical grid lines. Turning on the vertical grid lines will help my end user or the end users to separate separate one column from the other. So I'm just going to turn on this and then change the color to yellow. Another thing that I want to do is for the headers, I want the headers to bold. Okay, so I'm going to go down to column headers and then just select this bold, and I'll make sure to realign the columns just so every text fits into their respective columns. For the values, I'm going to have to increase the font size a little, so let's say to 16, let's say 17. And so this is much better because right now I can see the text, which is what we want. Another thing that I'm going to do here for this table is that for the borders, the table borders or the corners, I want the corners to be rounded. So I'm going to select the table and go to format your visual, go to general, go to effects. And here I have the visual borders. For the rounded corners, I am going to say 10. Now let's look at how that looks like. So you see this is much better. Those sharp edges, those sharp corners are gone, and now we have rounded corners, which is more easier on the eyes. I'm just going to expand the width of the table a little. Okay, so we're done with the table. The next thing that I want to do is to add the text starts by managers, and also add a text here for employee information. You can add text in two ways. So from the home tab, there is a text box here in the insert section, or you can go to the insert tab and then just select the text box. So whichever way works. From the home tab, I'm going to select the text box. So I'm just going to collapse my ribbons again. Let me just bring this here. And for this text, I am going to write starts by manager. I'm going to highlight all the text so that I can format them. So I'm going to highlight the text so that I can format it. So to highlight, I'm just going to press Ctrl A on my keyboard and then come here to the format and change the font size from 10 to 18. So let's say 20. And then I'm going to set the alignment to the center. I'm just going to reduce the height of this a little and bring this to the center. So just drag this using the three ellipses, or using the ellipses at the top here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to format the font color, or the color of the text. So for start, I want the start text to be yellow, just like what we have in the reference dashboard. So I'm going to highlight this and then go to the font color. So I'm just going to select the drop down and select yellow. Then other text should be this white 10% darker. Now the next thing is to turn off the background for the text box. So for this, we have the general section here. So I'm just going to go to effect and turn off the background. And here I'm just going to move this to the right location where it's supposed to be, which is at the middle. And then I'm going to replicate same for the employee information, which is supposed to be at the top of our card visual. So instead of bringing in or adding a new text box, I can actually copy this text box and paste it here. So how to do that is by selecting the text box. When you select inside the text, it doesn't mean that you have actually selected the entire text box. Now to select the entire text box, you need to click on the border or the border lines. Okay, so that's what I'm going to click on, and then I'm going to Ctrl C to copy and Ctrl V to paste. And then I'm going to move this to the top here and change the alignment to left. Okay, because the employee information text is on the left, right? Just like what we have here. So because I want to maintain this yellow color, I am going to highlight it and type in employee and then other texts, information. So I'm just going to take out the by, it's not needed, and we're done with that. The next thing that I want to do is to add the appropriate slicer. So for the main slicer, we have the employment status slicer. So from here, users can select active to see the information of active employees, or to filter the dashboard by active employees. And then they can select terminated for a cause or voluntarily terminated. You can even multi-select as the case may be. So for this, I'm going to come to my visualization pane and select the slicer. So I'll be selecting the slicer that I used. So let's bring this up here. And then I'm going to, so we just have just one single field here. So you can drop whatever field you want to filter your report or your dashboard. And in our case, I want to add the employment status. So I'm just going to come here to format your visual, go to values and increase the font size from 12 to 15. I'm also going to turn off the slicer header, and then I'm going to change the style from a list to a drop down so that users can select the slicer and then it drops down and then you can select whatever category you want. So for that, I'll go to the slicer settings, and in the slicer settings, you're going to see the style. So here you can change the style of your slicer. I'm going to select this and change it to drop down. And then I'm going to expand the selection to make sure that multi-select is turned on so that users can multi-select. So in cases where they want to see information about inactive employees, right? So they can come here and select both the terminated for cause and voluntarily terminated by holding down the control key. So when I select terminated for a cause, to select the voluntarily terminated too, I'm going to have to hold down my control key. Okay, and now this will give us information of employees that are inactive and also their respective manager information. Okay, so I'm going to just select the slicer and reduce it. So let's bring this here. And then I'm going to turn off the main background. So for that, I'll be going to general, effect, and then turn off the background. Now, after doing that, if you notice, there's no more background. And when I select my text, I mean, when you can't really see the drop down, right? So I'm going to go to the visual section, go to values. Under the values, you're going to see another background. I'm going to select that and select white. Another thing that I want to do is just increase the font size of the values or the text in this slicer. So I'm just going to increase it from 15 to 18. And then I am going to also increase the width of the slicer. And then I'm going to copy and paste this employee information text box. So to do that, I'm going to click on the border. So Ctrl C and Ctrl V. And then I'm going to bring it up here. So the text that we're going to have is filter by employment status. So for the yellow part, this is going to be filter by and then employment. So I'm just going to take out the information, employment status. And then I'll move this closer to the slicer. Okay, so now that we're done with this, another thing that we're going to do is to add a slicer for the employee information section. So here, users can select a particular employee to see that employee's information, whether they are still active or not, to know their position, their manager, and any other information that they would like to know. So for this, I'm going to select the slicer, Ctrl C to copy and Ctrl V to paste. And then I'm going to move it from here down here. And then I am going to remove the employment status right from the slicer. So I'll just click on the X to remove that. And what I'm going to add next is the employee name. So I'll just drag and drop that in the field. Now, whenever I select on any employee, so let me select the first employee here, you would see that the information, the cards here, every information here will focus on this particular employee that I've selected. Now, one thing that I want to do is to turn off the interaction for other visuals. Now, what do I mean? This slicer for the employee information should only affect or should only work on the cards and not the other visuals on this dashboard. And it's very easy to do that. So what you want to do is to select the slicer, go to format. In the format tab, you're going to see edit interactions. So I'm going to click on this. So from here, now you can see these icons at the top of each visual, each shape and element we have on this dashboard. I'm going to locate the visuals and then click on this none icon. So for the table, I'm going to click on this none icon. I don't need to do it for the shapes because the shapes are not being affected by the slicer. And then I'm also going to locate the icon for other visuals. So you want to make sure that you don't select other visuals, because when I do, so let's say I select this visual while the edit interaction is still on, it is going to focus on this visual and then we can turn off interaction in other visuals. So whenever, so basically what that means is that whenever I select anything in this visual and I turn off the interaction in other visuals, nothing moves. So other visuals stay the same, even if I am selecting this visual or selecting the data points in this visual. So I'm going to go back to this slicer and select it. Okay, so what I want to do is to turn off the interaction for this visual. So you can see that everything is the same, stays the same when I turned off the interaction. I'll do the same thing for the map. I'll do the same thing for the cards at the top here. I'll do the same thing for the employees by recruitment source. So now you notice that nothing changes or nothing is happening, and that's because other elements, right, the icons from other elements are blocking this. So what I'm going to do is just move this visual for downward and then select the slicer again. Okay, so let me just select the slicer again, and now I can see the icons, the interaction icons for the recruitment source. So I'll just turn this off and move this back to where it was. All right, so now that we're done with this, I'm just going to go back to, so let me select the slicer again and go back to the format tab and unselect the edit interactions button. So now whenever I select any employee, what changes are just the values in this card visual. Another thing that I would like to correct in this card visual is that some values are not displayed fully. The text are not fully displayed. So to correct this, I am going to go to format your visual, callouts, value, and then I am going to turn on the text wrap. So if this still doesn't work, I'm going to come here to the font size and just reduce the font size a little. So let's say 22 is fine. Now, another thing that I want to do, let's go back to the reference dashboard. We have here this termination reason button. Now, when I click on this button, what comes up is the different termination reasons and the number of employees that have been terminated for these reasons. And at the top, we have the filter by employment status, which focuses on just the terminated employees, the inactive employees. And then we also have this close button to close out this view. So we're going to replicate this same bookmark. Now, this is a bookmark. And like I explained earlier, bookmark just helps you add items to your dashboard without necessarily creating more page or an extra page. I'm going to go back to our dashboard, and then I am going to add a button for the termination reason. So to add a button, I'm going to click on insert and then go to, so let me just expand this. So you're going to see buttons in the element section. Okay, so I'm just going to click on that and select a blank button. So let me collapse this again, and then I'm just going to move this here and increase the size a little. And now I can start formatting it. So I'm going to go to style. I'll turn on the text, and in the text, I'm going to have, so what do we have in the reference dashboard? We have termination reason. So I'm going to have termination reason. And then I'm going to increase the font size to 15. Let's say 18. I'll turn off the icon because there's no need for any icon. And then I'm going to turn on the fill, expand it and change the color to yellow and set the transparency to 0. So I'm just going to give the text color a darker shade. So for the font color, I am going to be making use of the placeholder color. And then another thing that I want is for this button to have rounded corners. So I'll select that, go to shape, and then for the rounded corners, let's say 15. So I'm going to add an effect to this button. Now, what is this effect? So this effect is that Whenever a user hovers on the button, the text increases in size. So it just gives it a really cool UI effect and makes the user experience good. So it makes it look as if they are operating on a mobile phone or a website or an app. So I'm going to select this, go to style. So you can see that you can apply settings to different states in your visual or your shapes or your buttons. So right now, this is the default state. I'm going to select on hover. So basically, when a user hovers on this button, the font size should increase to 20. So let's try it. So now do you see that when I hover on it, the font size increases to 20. So the text increases basically. And when I on over or leave the text, it goes back to its default size. So I'm just going to change the state back to default. Now the next thing that I want to do is to create a visual for the employees by termination reason. All right, so the first thing is to have a placeholder. So I'm going to select one of the placeholders, Ctrl C and Ctrl V. So I'll bring this here to the middle and increase the size a little, and then just move it to the middle of the dashboard, and also make it transparent a little. So for that, I'll be going to the style, and then I'll set the transparency to 20. And then I'm going to turn on the border, then change the color to yellow. So let's see how that looks. And this is how it's going to look. Okay. I'll select this again, go to style and turn on. A shadow is already turned on, which is good. Now the next thing that I want to do is to create the visual. So I'll be selecting these employees by recruitment source. So Ctrl C and then Ctrl V to paste. So right now you can see that we just have a single bar, and that is because this visual that I just copied and pasted is being affected by this slicer. So what we need to do is to turn off the interaction. So I'm going to come here to this slicer, I'll select it, go to the format tab and turn on the edit interactions, and then I will come here to this visual I just pasted and turn off the interaction. Okay, so I'm just going to unselect these edit interactions buttons. Now let's work with this. So we want to have employees, the total number of employees by their different termination reason. So what we have here is employees by recruitment source, and the recruitment source is on the y-axis. I'm just going to remove it by clicking on this X, and then I'm going to drag and drop the termination reason on the y-axis. So I'll drag and drop the termination reason on the y-axis. But what we want is a column and not bar, or column chart and not a bar chart. So for this, before I do that, let me just increase the width, just walk around, play around with the sizing. Okay, so we want to leave a little space at the top for our slicer. Okay, so then I'm going to change this to a column chart by selecting this bar chart, and then go to the visualization pane and just clicking on the stacked column chart to change it. Okay, so here we have NA still, we have this long column which represents termination reason, NA still employed. So these are for employees that are still active. So what we want to do is to filter this visual alone first by selecting it and expanding the filters pane. And then in the term reason, I'm going to expand the term reason. Okay, so instead of this, let's do it another way. I'm going to add a filter. So you can see filters on this visual. We just have employees and termination reason. So I'm going to add another filter, which is employment status. So I'll drag and drop that in this add data field on this visual. And then I'll select all and unselect the active. And by so doing that, you can see that we no more have the NA still employed. So now we are just focusing on those that are inactive, those that have been terminated. So I'm just going to increase the width a little. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is to change the visual title, because it still has the employees by recruitment source, but right now we have employees by termination reason. So I'm going to select the visual, go to format your visual, go to the general section, expand the titles, and change the recruitment source to termination reason. Termination reason. And now we need to add the slicer at the top. So for that, I'm going to copy and paste this filter by employment status text box by selecting the border or clicking on the border line. So Ctrl C to copy and Ctrl V to paste. So I'll bring this here, and then I'm also going to copy and paste the employment status slicer. So I'll select it, Ctrl C and Ctrl V to paste, copy and paste, and then I'll put this here. So right now you can see what is going on. Okay, so this slicer is being affected by the employee information slicer, by the employee name slicer. So I'm going to correct this by, let me just move this here. I'll select the employee name, go to the employee name slicer, then go to the format tab, click on the edit interactions, and just turn off the interaction. So let's see what we have. So now you can see that everything is now, all the categories are now shown. This slicer doesn't affect this slicer anymore. So I'm going to turn off this edit interaction button or feature. So let's bring this back up. So now we need to make sure that the categories here in this slicer only relate to terminated employees. So that means we need to get rid of the active category. And just like what we did for this visual, I'm going to select the slicer, expand the filters for the employment status. So I don't need to drag and drop the employment status here because I already have it. I'm going to expand this, select all, and unselect the active. So now that we're done with this, the next thing that I want to do is to add the icon that lets the user close this view. So for that, I'll go to insert, go to the buttons, and add a blank button. And then I'll just drag and drop this somewhere here. I'll increase the height a little, okay? Then I'll go to style. I'll turn on the text. Then in the text, I'm going to put in letter X in uppercase, and then increase the size to 18. I'll bold it. I'll change the font color to yellow. I'll also come here and turn off the border. So just like what we did for the termination reason button, I want that whenever the user over on this X icon to close, the text or the letter X increases in size. So I'll come here to the state and change it to on over. So on over, I want the font size to be 20. So now whenever I over on it, you can see that the letter X increases in size. All right, so I'm just going to change this on over back to default. So one quick thing that I'm going to do before I show you how you can now apply the bookmark, because right now no bookmark has been created, okay, but we're going to create it very soon. I am going to group all the elements here together as one. So I'm going to select everything starting from the X icon to the slicer. So holding down my control key, I'm selecting everything. Then I'm going to select the text box, select the chart, then last I'll select the placeholder. Holding down the control key, I'll select the placeholder and then go to format, go to group, and then select group. Now everything is grouped as one. So meaning if I move it, you see that everything is moving as one. Okay, let me just align this very well. I don't know why I moved it earlier. Okay, so now this is good. So whenever you select it once, okay, everything moves together. So that is if you select it once. But if you select an item in a group more than once, it means you are selecting that item. So let's say you want to format this visual, right? When you select it just once, you selected the group. But when you click on the visual again, now you are selecting the item. Okay, so with this, you can format your elements, your visuals in a group. So I'm just going to collapse this data field and collapse the visualization panes rather, and then go to view and turn on the selection and bookmark pane. Okay, so these are going to be very useful for creating the bookmark. Now, there is one thing we need to do before the bookmark. So we need to make sure that everything that we want on our dashboard is ready. All the elements, everything is ready. So right now, this dashboard doesn't have a title. All right. So in our reference dashboard, we have this HR dashboard title that tells users what this dashboard is about. I mean, it could be better, but let's leave it as HR dashboard. And then we have this icon just to give it a pop. Here, I'm going to go to home and add a text box. So this text box, I'm going to type in HR dashboard. Okay, I'm going to highlight all the text and change the font size or increase the font size from what it is to, let's say, 28, and then give it a bold format. And then I'm going to turn off the background. So I'm going to expand my format text box, go to effect and turn off the background. So I'll just close this, and then the font color, I'm going to change the font color to white. So let me reduce the height a little and just move this to the top. Okay, so let me select this. So let's decrease the font size to 24, and then just reduce this border a little. Okay, now the next thing is to bring in the icon. So I have already downloaded the icon, but if you want to get icons for free, you can go to flat icon. I think it's flaticon.com, okay, to get free icons. So to insert my icon, I'm going to go to the insert tab and select the image icon here to add an image to the report. So I'll select that. So right now there is no image here. So let me just quickly collapse this selection pane and bookmarks pane and expand my format image pane. So for the style, I will expand the style, go to image. You can see that the image source is upload image. You can actually enter the URL of the image that you want in your dashboard. But if you have that image already on your PC, all you just need to do is to upload it. Okay, so let's stick with uploading the image. And then I'm going to click on browse. So here is my icon. I've already formatted the color because when I downloaded the icon, it wasn't that particular color, but I've already gone ahead to change the color so to yellow. So I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to reduce the size of this, okay, and move this closer to the HR dashboard text. Now that we are done with this, I'm just going to collapse the visualization pane and expand the bookmarks pane and selection pane. Now, these are the panes that are very critical in creating our bookmarks. So we need to have a default view. So for that, I'm going to select this group. So in my selection, you can turn off or you can hide visuals, you can hide elements in your dashboard, you can hide your visuals and hide your groups in your dashboard. So right now my group is selected. I'm going to hide this group. So I'll just come here to the selection and hide it. Okay, so now this is going to be the default view. When my user opens this dashboard on the web, this is going to be the default view. So here I'm going to add a bookmark, and I'll name this bookmark as default view. After doing this, I'm going to turn on or show this visual on hide the group that I just hid. I'm going to click on this eye again to unhide it. And then I'm going to add another bookmark. So we'll call this bookmark employees by termination reason bookmark. Okay, because you need to name your bookmark appropriately, or you need to name your bookmarks correctly. Okay, because you can have more than one bookmark on your dashboard, in your dashboard, so you need to name them correctly. So this is going to be employees by term reason. Let's say by term reason. Okay, so I'll press enter to save. Now when I select the default view bookmark, you see what happens. It goes back to the default view, right? That was the first bookmark we created when we hid the group the grouped elements. Now, when I select the employees by term reason, it shows the group. So now we need to apply these bookmarks to the buttons so that whenever we click on the buttons, they work as they are intended to, or they are supposed to. Right? Whenever I click on determination reason, it shows me this group. And whenever I click on this X icon, it closes this group to show the default view. So for this, I'm just going to go back to view and turn off the bookmarks pane and selection pane. So let's have our visualization and format pane open. Now I've selected this termination reason button. To make this functional, okay, I'm going to turn on the action here. So there are different types of action, okay, but the action that I want to focus on is the bookmark. Okay, so I'm going to change the type to bookmark, and then I'm going to select the bookmark. So whenever I click on termination reason, it should show me the employees by term reason bookmark, which is this group. So I'll select it. I'll click on this drop down and select employees by termination reason. So we also have a tooltip. That is when the user hovers on this button, what do you want them to see? Okay, so it could be like an information, a call to action for them to take. So right now the default tooltip is Control plus click here to follow, which should be better. Okay, so I'm going to come in here to the tooltip text and change it to view employees by termination reason. Okay, so now whenever the user hovers on this button, they get this information: view employees by termination reason. I'm going to do the same thing for the X icon, so I'll just select that. And remember, when you select a group once, the whole group is selected, but when you select that item twice, the focus is now shifted or moved to the item. So I'm going to select the X icon again and turn on the action, and then I'll change the type to bookmark, and then I'll come here to the drop down and select default view. So basically when the user clicks on this X, they go back to the default view. So for the tooltip, let's say close. Okay, so let's say close this view. Now whenever the user hovers on this X icon, it shows them this information: close this view, which makes it user friendly. Now they don't have to guess what the icon means or is meant to do. Whenever they hover on it, they get that information. So whenever you are building your dashboard, your report, always have the user, the end user, at the back of your mind. How do you want them to interact with the dashboard, with the visuals? You want to ensure that, or you want to make sure that they can easily interact with it. Okay, because not all end users have technical expertise. So you need to make sure that everything is easy. The user interaction is easy. The design is functional. The buttons work. The bookmarks work. Everything works. Okay. So let me just close this. Now, when I hold down my control key and click on this X icon, it closes this view and we're back to the default view. So again, if this was on the web, if you were viewing this report, this dashboard on the web, you wouldn't need to hold down your control key to make the buttons work. Okay, all you just need to do is to select it. But because we are inside the Power BI desktop, you need to hold down the control key to make it functional. So whenever I click on the X icon, it closes the view, and whenever I click on the termination reason button, it displays the view. That is it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed practicing with me, and again, I have left the link to get the data in the description. So when you are done recreating this, do make sure that you tag me on LinkedIn, and I'll see you in my next video.